What's going on, MMA fans? Man, got a lot of emails, a lot of questions. Where have you been at? What's going on? This semester of school killed me, absolutely killed me. One of the toughest semesters I've ever had in college. There was just absolutely no time for YouTube, unfortunately. But the good news is, while I was doing all that schoolwork, I was still following MMA. I saw 97, went to a sports bar with some friends. Actually, some guys that I've just got knowledgeable into MMA. It's really cool to help educate friends of yours that they don't know about it, but they're kind of interested in it, and actually got them interested in another subject, which I'll talk about in my next video. I've been following MMA since I've been gone, and I promised that I was going to come on my promo video, do a 97 review, talk about some MMA news, Chuck Liddell, talk about the Nick Diaz-Frank Shamrock fight, and also touch on Anderson Silva, which will actually be tied in with the 97 review. So let's go ahead and get right down to this. I'm really going to go into depth about two of the fights on here, which is Anderson Silva, Chuck Liddell. The other three on the main card, I'm kind of just going to run over, kind of give the result, kind of give my feedback on it. Brian Stan, Louise Kane, good fight, but one of the things that I noticed, and Cantwell has done this, even when he was in the WEC, of course, was the WEC light heavyweight champion, beat Brian Stan, who's also on this card, in order to get that, but kept using the same 1-2 kick combination throughout the whole fight. Louise was able to pick up on that. Louise had, the better the combinations on the feet, better clinch work. Louise got rocked a couple of times where Cantwell had a couple good overhand rights, couple good jabs, but Louise was able to win this fight via unanimous decision, and he's definitely a guy to look out for at 205 in the light heavyweight division, without a doubt. Next fight, Cheick Kongo, Anthony Hardonk. Definitely a fight I was looking forward to. Two strikers. Hardonk has some of the best leg kicks in MMA, with the exceptions of Mirko Crocott, Pat Barry, guys like that. Against a guy in Cheick Kongo who's one of the elite strikers, not only in the UFC but in MMA. Very entertaining fight. Kongo was able to impose his will, had the better of the combinations, had good ground and pound, was able to stop Hardonk on the ground with a second round TKO. Looked very impressive. If he doesn't get a title shot off of this fight, his next fight, if he wins, he's definitely going to get one. So he's definitely the guy to look out for in the heavyweight division for either Frank Mir or Brock Lesnar, whoever wins that fight. All right, next fight, Krzysztof Soszynski taking on Brian Stan. Brian Stan, the former WEC light heavyweight champion. Soszynski's always been a great submission wrestler, training out of Quest. He's always one of those guys that you have to look out for. He's in the later part of his career, but he's a guy that I really wanted to see be in the UFC. He's always been a guy that I enjoy watching him fight. He's got decent submissions off of his back, but his top game is just awesome. And you actually got to see the nasty Kimura he pulled off on Brian Stan, the way that he did that. But Soszynski's a guy to look out for. Hopefully he improves. Looks a little bit more into striking. I think that's an area that he can improve on. And if he does that, he's definitely a guy to look out for at 205. For Brian Stan, I'm sure the UFC is going to bring him back. He's definitely a guy that works hard. He's got a good work ethic, and I don't see any reason why the UFC won't bring him back. All right, on to the co-main event: Chuck Liddell taking on Shogun Rua. Man, Shogun looked like the old Shogun in this fight. There were a lot of underlying things going on, some stuff that unfortunately I can't talk about because I had some inside information with a friend of mine that I know that gave me some feedback on some stuff. But Shogun looks like he's finally in his right place. He's finally training properly. He looked excellent in this fight. After the knockout of Chuck, just didn't even look gassed. He just kind of looked like, yo, where's my next fight? I'm ready to go. Just the nasty left hook, dropping Chuck, had the beautiful hammer fist, had the takedown, had Chuck's back. The nasty leg kicks, the leg kicks looked on point. That was one thing I was looking for, to see how much power did he throw into his leg kicks. Did they look solid? And they did, man. This Shogun right here, if this is the Shogun that we continue to see, he continues to train, if he looks like he does right now, somewhat similar to how he looked in Pride, this is going to be a scary dude at 205. Mark my words. He's definitely going to be a guy to watch out for. So congratulations to him for winning this fight. For Chuck Liddell, he's now, on the brink of retirement, and actually he is retired, per the reports, after the fight from Dana, from some interviews with MMA News, MMA Junkie, Sherdog, And, you know, if this was his last fight, he did have a lot of good fights. He had a lot of memories to give us. He brought a lot of fans into MMA that helped build this sport. So for that, you have to be grateful. You may not like him. You may not necessarily like his style, but he did contribute a lot to MMA. So if this was his last fight, I wish him the best. All right, main event, Anderson Silva, Thales Leites. I am not going to rip this fight as bad as some others have. I actually just got done watching Sean's video, the MMA Professor, and man, he went off on Anderson Silva and Thales Leites. And when I was watching the fight, I'm going to have to admit, I actually did the same thing, but I thought about it, and then I came at it from two perspectives. And one of them is, it was impressive to see Anderson not take any damage in the fight. It just goes to show, you know, where he's at, you know, the level that he's at compared to everybody else in that division. And for the most part, he's beaten everybody that's of any consequence in that division. But the other thing that kind of bothered me is, it seems that the answer to everybody's question about why isn't Anderson finishing fights, why isn't he looking like he used to look like, I think he's bored. I think that's what it comes down to. The Cote fight, you know, he went back to the locker room, he sparred. I mean, you know, that's just, you hear these kind of things and you see these kind of performances, it's almost like he's trying to drag it out to get himself in danger, to make the fight interesting. It's just like he doesn't care. There was an article about 2 or 3 months ago where they were asking Anderson Silva about Paulo Fio's comments about how he did not, Paulo Fio did not like the American fan base and how they always wanted knockouts and they did not understand MMA. And Anderson Silva said, yes, I agree with his comments. That right there is another proponent of something that I see, that these last 2 fights, you had a lot of boos, you had a lot of people pissed off, and I think that Anderson's mentality is, well, why don't you understand MMA? Why don't you understand what's going on instead of just wanting knockouts? And I think that's another thing that plays into this. I think that, you know, a lot of the guys that have come out of there, you know, you've heard Paulo Fio make comments about it, you've heard Machida has mentioned it in several of his interviews, some things about the American fan base. Ricardo Arona had mentioned it a couple times. Some of the guys from Brazil, Vanderlei Silva back in some of the Pride days had mentioned it. And I think that this all plays into some of the situations that you're seeing with Anderson. But I think ultimately the answer to everyone's question, in my mind and in my opinion, is that he is bored with this weight class. So hopefully some fights at 205, like the fight with Forrest Griffin coming up, will maybe give him a little bit of a spark. The Nick Diaz, Frank Shamrock fight, I just want to touch on this real quick. It's funny, speaking of Sean the MMA Professor, me and him had actually talked about this fight when it was announced. And we both were talking about how we thought that Nick Diaz might pitter-patter Frank Shamrock and you know, wear him down and get a TKO victory, and that's actually exactly what happened. You know, Diaz was able to use his range, pitter-patter Shamrock. Shamrock was not able to get inside. I kind of saw that coming. You know, Diaz is a tough kid. Diaz is definitely a kid to watch out for at 155, at 170. Maybe not so much at the, you know, the catch weight bouts, but he's definitely a guy to look out for at lightweight, and he is still a top contender, I think. If he fights at 170, I think he can hang with some of the guys in that division for the most part. So that is my update on MMA news, my update on UFC 97, my review. I'm going to have a video here probably in the next hour or so. I'm going to cover UFC 2009, a full review of the game. Not so much gameplay. I want to talk about the controls and some of the things and why I think you should buy it and what makes this game so much better than previous MMA games. So make sure to check that out. And I will be back next week to do my UFC 98 predictions. And make sure you send me questions for MMA Corner. That's the other thing I was going to say. I'm going to start doing that bi-weekly. You know, topics, suggestions, things you want me to talk about. That's what the MMA Corner is intended for. Make sure to check out my sponsors on the description side. And on that note, you guys, have a great day.